announcements. And they expect this to run into September. So we have plenty of time, May, to get to the people all summer long on your show, on the campuses, through our mailing lists, which are very limited, with the articles that people like you and Stephanie Caruana are doing. And you see, the point is that because of their desperation, each state is going to have its own program of repression. The zebra and the SLA scare has got people in a very nervous state of mind. But on the other hand, more and more young people are becoming anti-establishmentarian. And Patty Hearst is, I think, just the beginning. And I think there'll be an epidemic. You pointed out in the Berkeley Barb article how the kidnapping is a softening process to make people accept people's disappearance and vanishing. We have continually to let the people understand, and by talking to them this way, they will be more and more skeptical of the government. You see, we've yielded the right to violence to a racist, genocidal, militaristic, corrupt, assassination-prone society and government.
One bet on death, nothing
that's
but
right.
death and murder.
And what we have to do now is to make people aware of that, so they'll begin to make their own connections, and they won't have to refer to people like
and of
you.
their own life forces. We see what I do wherever I speak. I give out a bibliography of about 30 essential books. And people are buying these books, and they write. You saw the mail today. People ask for the bibliography, and I say, well, I'm not going to stand up here and tell you all I know. I'm not a sideshow. You're going to invest your own eyes, your own time and money, and get knowledge and information. Then you write letters, and you take pressure. You say, look, this is what I know. What are you going to do about it?
But I noticed from your mail that in addition to people who want you to tell them what to do, you get mail from people who are telling you what is happening.
Yes.
You see, on the Army bases,
in the prisons,
in the question of the psychosurgery, and then people like Peter Bregan and Mary Lou Shields in Boston are beginning. So you see, the polka dots of the oppressed are running together too. And while we don't have the wherewithal to pull what they're pulling, since they're in the wrong, we don't need as much.
See, the one thing we have on our side, like as you say, they're in the wrong, is that if I had told you, see, we give the lectures, they're paying money now to hear how corrupt other people are.
Exactly, but the prosecutors are beginning to see that you can make a big name for yourself, not just prosecuting little people, but prosecuting big people. And of course, your suggestion that people look into the jury that freed Stans and Mitchell is fine, but I don't even mind that so much, because what I find is people get so frustrated when they have the kind of evidence and see the kind of evidence they have on Stans and Mitchell and watch them get away, and then see how quickly and with what dispatch they can just pick up people, tear up their houses, break up their places and their shops. Then they begin to get more and more angry. So as far as I'm concerned, they can't do right even when they do right, and they can't do wrong even when they do wrong, because we get them either way it goes.
Either way, you can't get upset that Mitchell and Stans got off, because when you think that John Mitchell was the most important lawyer in the country, they have the Attorney General and New York lawyer, the prosecution can't afford to present evidence that he looks guilty, because then he comes back. He's not going to go to jail without talking about the president. They're double blackmailing each other, so you know they have to have a weak prosecution.
Did you know that Judge Gagliardi that handled that trial had held Joanne Chesimard's aunt, who was also her attorney, in contempt for refusing to go forward with their trial on about a week's notice? And that was how I got stuck defending Joanne Chesimard, when I never did criminal work ever in my whole career to any extent. And they were so desperate that they had me handling her trial when I was home at Christmas.
Well, you know, the trial of Hugo Pinnell out in Salinas, he had a well-known lawyer up in Northern California who was going to take his case, and the lawyer was tied up on another case, and the judge says, we have to go to trial this week, and wouldn't give him another date, and gave him a public defender 2 days on a murder trial of killing a guard. And, you know, they rushed those things through. But you see, this is
typical. But you see, now, one of the things I think that we should be aware of is that that the president is getting paid at the rate of $200,000 a year while he's fiddling and diddling around refusing evidence. On the other hand, they're saying we want Watergate behind us, and yet he's trying to stretch this so that you'll have the problem of a second Congress having to hear this evidence. And the other thing I think that people should do, excuse me, just 1 second, is to force them to move ahead and say that we're going to have dump Senator X in our state if that trial doesn't begin, EON standard. Because the idea of paying this pigocrat a salary, regardless if it was $2,000 a year, he should be off the payroll. And here he is holding up the investigation, demanding speed.
Of course, there's one good thing about that, Flo. As long as Nixon's in the White House, and I, in a way, kind of think he should be there the remaining of the 4 years for this reason.
I know.
See, this reason, I've spent 10 years going over the Warren Commission lies, and I know that Gerald Ford is so guilty of a cover-up. He's worse than any Ehrlichman, Haldeman, Dean, all rolled together. So what the kind of mentality in news media that the Pentagon pushes out would do this. If Nixon were out tomorrow, they'd say, now that we have
everybody.
Ford, let's give him a clean chance for American security. Let's not go into the past, because the past is the past. The past is the present, and, you know, the sugar you eat today is going to rot your teeth 10 years from now.
I appreciate that strategy, but my point is simply that they're going to do what they do either way. So your strategy says even if he stays in, it's good for us.
Because, you see, the longer he's in, this is the point. If he's out, they say you can't whip a dead horse. Like they let Agnew out so fast, he had 40 charges against him, and they let him out with one. So I think you should take the position of letting Nixon in and keep whipping it up on him.
But you see, the way I do it, I call it sort of a jujitsu. Whichever way their weight goes, mine goes with it. If he's out in a hurry, some of us can press. They're going to drag their feet anyway. So some of us should press for him to be out because he has no business in there.
But some should,
other people should have pressed for him to stay in, so that either way they go, there would be a substantial contingent of people prepared to proceed on the outcome.
I'm afraid they'll lose their vigilance once they get a new house in there. That's why I would rather dangle it and bring everything out now, because they'll lose their vigilance.
Well, they are taking care of that for you. That's all I'm saying. Their strategy is to drag their feet. So our strategy can work in with theirs where it does, and can work against them where it does not. That's all I mean.
And call attention to these. Well, listen, our time is up. I really appreciate your coming to see us, and I'm sorry it's over so fast. But we'll be together in, I see we have more time. Do we have more time?
Do we really? Yeah, we got 7 more minutes.
We got 7 more. Okay, then we'll talk for 7 minutes. See, here's my reason about keeping Nixon on. If Agnew were still vice president, and you went into this long thing about him, and you didn't let him out on a slap of the wrist, he's going out, Mr. Virtuous, writing these little phony little sexy books, or a form of a blackmail too, what he's writing there. He should stay in and have the 40 counts against him. If he did 40 illegal things, we should have heard all 40. Because now everybody says Agnew only did one thing, and the media crucified him, and he got out on one little thing when he was not even the vice president, in Maryland. And the point is, let the public know all the things they do, because then they couldn't come back later and say the media crucified Agnew. They could say he was out on 40 charges. Here they are. Now, if Nixon had resigned, like I have an article from the Washington Post, New York Times, a list of 56 impeachable charges against Nixon, and one of them is the plumbers. Well, that pertains to all your secret murders, assassinations, tricky departments, so you know what the other 54 or 53 are. But if Nixon had resigned a month after the Watergate, we still wouldn't have had all of this.
Covered.
So the
but you see, they are working on your end of it. They are working to stall it. So my position is, I like to have a parenthetical strategy where you are rushing them and you're holding them back at the same time. Obviously, we are not going to determine whether he ends the term in the White House. The chances are that is his whole strategy. So you might have your way with his cooperation. My point is, for those people, and I know there are many of them who think, as I do, although I agree that, the other strategy is a perfectly acceptable one, as I see it, we must teach politicians that they cannot string things out and have things their own way and determine what's going to be subpoenaed and so forth. So they are working on your end of it. See, they're working to delay it, so you'll probably have your way after all.
You're not only teaching politicians what we're doing, that they can't have their way, because they're not going to have it anyway by being crooked and corrupt, but you're teaching men like Mr. Hearst, who writes an editorial in the paper, that the party he supported for 20 years was corrupt. And if we got him out so fast, Hearst
wouldn't have had an opportunity.
Wouldn't have had to write an article.
That's true.
So he says, I really heard it's the most painful thing to say that the man I supported for 20 years, it turns out to be all these things. Well, if he'd gone on the streets of Haight-Ashbury and said to a perfectly beautiful child, look, you lovely person, why did you leave that mansion or that home with your washing machine, dryer, and the car your parents bought you and all that. Why'd you leave home? And they said, because I don't want this genocidal war, and the president is doing illegal bombing, and there's political assassinations in America. If they'd gone out and met this generation, they could have found out from them, like they could have found out, say, the stuff that I'm writing. The truth has always been there, but it took this man to support a crook 20 years and finally admit publicly he was wrong.
I suspect there's a connection between the kidnapping of Patty Hearst and that editorial that is not too difficult to see, because you see, in trying to arrange for the distribution of the food, it seems that Randy Hearst did finally contact the people from the women's movement and the people from the American Indian movement, and they attacked him viciously, but they taught him, because it was a personal experience, and he couldn't run to the suburbs and get in his private plane and take off and everything. And I suspect that his attitude toward the impeachment may conceivably have some small connection with the Patty Hearst situation.
Of course, this was her uncle, wasn't the father who wrote the article. But the thing is that if Nixon...
it's a family. There's nothing like something on your plate within your own family.
If I had my way, when the Watergate first broke, I would have taken the old Vodafil hook and taken him off the stage and said, let's have another election, and let's stand by those electronic voting machines. I think they're rigged. They were in other countries, like in Venezuela, who makes the machines and so forth. Let's find out what's going on. But on the other hand, we never would have had 56 impeachable charges, because they would have hushed it all up. So,
and 26 volumes of absolute.
That's right.
I've never seen anything so incriminating.
It's so great. And when once Gerald Ford gets his foot in that door with General Haig, and a bestseller. Oh, this book will be sold for hundreds of years. This is going to go on and on. It'll be the bestseller. They sold 300.
I think your course is going to begin to appear on many campuses, too.
Well, I hope so.
I believe so.
Of course, we took tapes of each one of the lectures, and I hope it will. Well, now, first I thought
we really are out of time.
My hour. I'm really off today. I can't keep track of the time, but that's okay. They'll let us do that, right?
Okay, congratulations, darling.
Thanks for coming, and you come again, okay?
Okay, thank you.
This has been Dialogue Conspiracy with political research specialist Mae Brussell, who for over 10 years has been researching the facts behind the political assassinations in this country so that the truth may be revealed. Dialogue Conspiracy originates with KLRB-FM in Carmel, California.